And now we continue with the episode Citizen Max. For the animation, I'd have to say it's about 6.5. It isn't horrible, but it's far below the show's normal standard of quality. The music is great, as per usual with Tiny Toons. The plot is a pretty good parody of Citizen Kane. It does a good job of following the basic structure of the movie while still making it its own, and does a good job of utilizing the Tiny Toons characters. The characters, even though Montana Max is the main character, Hampton, Plucky, Buster, and Babs all get quite a bit of screen time, and they'll have their moments of good comedy. For overall enjoyment, I'd have to give the episode an 8. Next up is the episode Hair Raising Night. For this episode, the animation, I'd give it a 6. That seems to be about the quality that Wang Films Productions does for their animation, where it's not great, but it's not horrible either. The quality of animation is about on par with the shows that have been coming out from other studios at that time period. The music, of course, is a 10, because you just can't beat a full blown orchestra. The plot involves Buster, Babs, Pluck, and Hampton going to stop Gene Splicer, who is a mad scientist who creates genetic mutations by combining different species of animals together. It's a fun little adventure themed episode that has a couple good twists and turns. So the plot's a 7.5. For the characters, Buster and Babs get quite a bit of Buster and Babs do quite a bit of heavy lifting in this episode. But the standout is Plucky. Plucky gets a lot of the best lines of dialogue. And his subplot about thinking that it's the Emmys is pretty hilarious and has a good payoff at the end too. All in all, the episode is a 7.5. And now we come to Furball Follies. The animation for this episode was done by ACOM and also with help from Nelson Productions. It's an improvement over Wang Films Productions, but it's not as good as TMS, so I give it a 7. The music is 10 as usual. The plot is 3 stories that all revolve around Furball the cat. The first story is he gets brought in by 2 people who are very with poor eyesight, but who hate cats, so he has to pretend to be a dog in order to stay in their house. And in the second story, he gets confused by. In the second story, he gets confused for being a skunk and is chased by Fifi LaFew. And then in the third story, he gets brought in by Mary Melody, who takes him on vacation so that he won't have to think about trying to eat Sweetie Bird. And hilarity and hijinks ensue as he tries to keep sneaking back and forth, trying to take shots at Sweetie while not letting Melody know what he's doing. And there's a little wraparound story that connects all the 3 stories together, because there's these 2 cats who keep trying to beat up Furball, and he keeps escaping them. For the characters, pretty much the entire episode has to be carried by Furball. And because Furball can't talk, so that means a vast majority of the comedy is slapstick. And the Furball episodes generally function like those Tweety and Sylvester episodes. So not a lot of dialogue, but mostly slapstick. I find that the slapstick was mildly amusing. It wasn't really gut-bustingly funny, but it was mildly amusing. It kept me interested throughout the episode. So for overall enjoyment, I have given this episode a 7. And lastly, we come to the Acme Acres Zone. This episode was animated by Wang Films Productions again. This episode was an improvement over the previous episodes in terms of quality of animation, but just slightly. So I have to give it a 6.5. Music, of course, is a 10. The plot, so 3 stories. The first story revolves around Montana Max being mean to Buster and Babs, so he has to get his so he gets his comeuppance. The second story is that Hampton goes Hampton and the second story is that Hampton and Plucky sneak into Montana's property and try to use his pool. And Hampton ends up going skinny dipping, loses his clothes, and then has to try to sneak back home without anyone noticing. And the third story is that Babs ends up losing her sense of humor, and then Hampton and Calamity Coyote have to go and chase it down and bring it back to her before Babs loses her sense of humor forever. It definitely got better as the episode went on. The second the second story was better than the first story, and the third story was better than the first 2 stories. All in all, I have to give a plot 7. For characters, I have given it a 7.5. There weren't a lot of standout moments in the episode, but the ones that were pretty funny. And for overall enjoyment, I have to give this episode a 7. Well, till next time, see ya.